I'm his wife now.
Lila's voice cracked off the hotel corridor walls. Mark's hand found her shoulder.
Go to the car,
he muttered. I stood by the elevator, gripping his spare charger like a weapon I couldn't swing. Chlorine from the indoor pool stung the back of my throat. A keycard sleeve slipped from his jacket and skated to my shoe room 1517, with a corporate discount code printed underneath. Why was my adopted daughter leaving my husband's hotel room at 11:15 on a Tuesday night?
Before we begin, please subscribe and like. It really helps. Wishing you health and happiness. Alright, let's begin.
Chapter 2. The numbers don't lie. The kitchen light buzzed. Sarah sat at the table with her laptop open and a cold cup of coffee she hadn't touched since midnight. Emma was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet enough to hear the refrigerator hum and the slow tick of the wall clock above the stove. She opened the joint credit card app. Her thumb hovered. Then she tapped. 3 months of statements loaded in neat rows. Hotel charges appeared first one every 2 weeks, always on Tuesday or Wednesday nights, always under corporate rate. The amounts varied. $189, $212, $195, all billed to the same Marriott location downtown. Her spoon slipped off the saucer and hit the tile floor. She didn't pick it up. Below the hotel charges, a pattern emerged. Small transfers, $50 here, $75 there, routed through a payment app linked to their joint account. The recipient name was abbreviated, just initials, L. J. Lila Johnson. Sarah scrolled further. The transfers weren't random. They followed the hotel stays like clockwork. A hotel charge on Tuesday, a transfer to L. J. on Wednesday, every single time, for 3 months. She pressed her palm flat against the table. The wood was cool, solid. She needed something solid right now because everything else was tilting sideways. That's a business expense account, Mark had told her 6 months ago when he'd added the card. Tax purposes, you don't need to check it. She believed him. She'd always believed him. Mark handled the money. Mark filed the taxes. Mark set up the auto pays and the savings transfers and the college fund contributions. Sarah handled the emotional architecture of the family, the school conferences, the therapy appointments, the holiday traditions, the late-night conversations when Lila couldn't sleep. The division had seemed natural. Now it seemed designed. She took a screenshot of the hotel charges, then the transfers, then the account summary showing both patterns side by side. She sent all 3 images to a new email address she created on her phone, sarahparkrecords@gmail, and deleted the sent folder from her main account. Her hands were steady now. Something had shifted behind her ribs. Not calm, exactly. Colder than calm. The tears she'd expected hadn't come. Instead, there was a clarity that felt almost surgical. She opened the calculator app and added up the transfers. 23 payments over 90 days. The total was $4,640. $4,640 from their joint account to their adopted daughter. While Sarah packed Lila's lunches for her night shift commute. While Sarah co-signed Lila's community college enrollment forms. While Sarah left the porch light on every Thursday because Lila said the dark driveway scared her. The refrigerator compressor kicked off. The silence that followed was enormous. Sarah closed the laptop. She picked up the spoon from the floor and set it in the sink. She rinsed her coffee mug. She wiped the counter. These small actions steadied her the way deep breaths were supposed to but didn't. Upstairs, a door creaked. Emma's bedroom. Sarah froze, listening. Footsteps padded to the bathroom. Water ran. Footsteps padded back. The door creaked again, then silence. Her daughter was safe. Her 13-year-old daughter, who still slept with a stuffed rabbit and thought Lila was the coolest big sister in the world, was safe and asleep and had no idea that the family she trusted was being hollowed out from the inside. Sarah sat back down. She opened the laptop again. This time she went to the bank's main portal, the joint checking account, not the credit card. She typed in the password Mark had set. It still worked. He hadn't changed it yet. The checking account told a different story. Larger withdrawals, cash, $800 on the 14th of last month. 1200 on the 28th, 600 2 weeks before that, all from ATMs she didn't recognize, not the Walgreens on Elm or the Chase branch near Target where they usually went. These were ATMs near the interstate, near the hotel. She added those up too. 2,600 in cash withdrawals over 60 days, plus the 4,600 in transfers. Over $7,000 moved in 3 months. $7,240. The number sat in her chest like a stone. Not because of the money itself, they weren't rich, but they weren't desperate either. It sat there because of what it meant. This wasn't passion. This wasn't a man losing his head over a young woman. Passion was messy and impulsive and left obvious trails. This was organized, scheduled, budgeted. Mark wasn't having an affair. Mark was running an operation. Sarah closed the laptop for the second time. She walked to the front window and looked out at the dark street. The neighbor's porch light, Danny Rivera's, was still on. It was always on. Danny said she kept it burning because she didn't trust the HOA's promises about streetlight maintenance. A car turned the corner. Headlights swept across the lawn and disappeared. The street went dark again. Sarah pulled her phone from her cardigan pocket and opened the photo gallery. She scrolled past school pictures and grocery lists and screenshots of Emma's soccer schedule until she found it. The adoption photo album, not the physical one on the shelf, but the digital backup she'd made 2 years ago. The first photo was Lila at 9 years old, standing in the courthouse lobby in a yellow dress, holding Sarah's hand with both of hers. Sarah stared at the photo. 9 years old. 7 foster homes before that. A file that listed reactive attachment and trust deficit and high need placement. Sarah had read that file and thought, I can be enough. She pressed the phone against her sternum. The glass was warm from her palm. This isn't about feelings, she whispered to the empty kitchen. Her voice sounded strange in the silence, thin but steady. This is about numbers. She opened a new note on her phone and typed a single line. Who is paying for what and why? She saved it and turned off the screen. The kitchen went dark except for the green glow of the microwave clock. 2:17 a.m. Somewhere in the house, a pipe groaned. The heater cycling on. Sarah sat in the dark and listened to her house breathe and wondered how long it had been breathing for someone else. Chapter 3: The Ghost in the Cloud. The laundry room smelled like dryer sheets and warm cotton. Sarah sat on the floor with her back against the washing machine, her phone propped on one knee. The dryer tumbled behind her, a low, rhythmic thud that covered the sound of her breathing. She'd come down here because it was the one room in the house without a smart speaker. No Alexa, no Echo Dot, just the dryer and the water heater and the faint hiss of the gas line behind the wall. She opened Settings, then Apple ID, then Family Sharing. 4 devices listed under the Park Holloway family group. Sarah's iPhone, Mark's iPhone, Emma's iPad, and Lila's phone, the one Sarah had added to the plan 2 years ago because Lila said she couldn't afford her own. Sarah tapped on her own account. Location sharing on. Shared with Mark Holloway, Lila Johnson. Every place she'd driven, every school she'd visited, every grocery store and gas station and therapist's office and courthouse records room, all visible to Mark and Lila in real time. Her mouth went dry. She opened Significant Locations, the buried setting that logged places her phone visited most often. Home, Washington Elementary. The Starbucks on 5th, Target, Drive, Kenny's office. Then an entry she didn't recognize. A location near the interstate, visited 11 times in the past 4 months. The pin dropped on a strip of commercial buildings: a FedEx store, a Thai restaurant, and a storage facility. Sarah had never been there, not once, but her account said she had. 11 times. The dryer buzzed. She flinched. The cycle had ended, but the drum kept turning slowly, winding down with a series of metallic clicks. She switched to iCloud settings and checked recent backups. Her last backup was 3 days ago normal, but there was a second device listed under her Apple ID, a device she didn't own. Model name iPhone 14 Pro, color graphite. Mark's phone was a 15. Hers was a 13. Emma had an iPad. Someone had registered a 14th generation iPhone to her Apple ID, and that phone had been backing up to her cloud storage for, she checked the date, 7 weeks. 7 weeks. Just before the first hotel charge appeared on the credit card, Sarah's fingers went cold. She pressed them against her thigh to warm them. The concrete floor beneath her was freezing, and she could feel it through her pajama pants, but she didn't move. She opened the recently deleted folder in Photos. Empty. Then she checked the hidden folder. Also empty, but the storage breakdown showed 4.2 gigabytes used by an app called Files, far more than she'd ever stored there. Someone had used her cloud as a locker, stored files, then deleted them, but the storage ghost remained. "He's inside my phone," she said to the dryer. The words came out flat, almost clinical. The fear hadn't arrived yet, or maybe it had arrived so completely that it felt like nothing at all. She thought about the significant locations entry, 11 visits to a place she'd never been. If Mark ever needed to argue that Sarah was unstable, that she was driving to strange locations, behaving erratically, her own phone would confirm it. Her own data would testify against her. This wasn't surveillance for jealousy. This was evidence construction. Sarah stood up. Her knees popped. She pulled the warm laundry from the dryer and piled it into the basket. Emma's soccer jersey, Mark's undershirts, her own work blouse. The fabric was hot against her cold hands. She buried her face in Emma's jersey for 3 seconds. It smelled like a child, like safety. Then she carried the basket upstairs and set it on the hallway floor outside the master bedroom. Through the door, she could hear Mark snoring, a steady, unbothered rhythm, the sound of a man who slept well because he believed his systems were airtight. Sarah went back downstairs with her phone. She sat at the kitchen table, the same chair, the same cold coffee residue in the same ring on the wood, and opened her Sarah Park Records email. She typed a message to herself. Unknown iPhone 14 Pro Graphite registered to my Apple ID. Backup running 7 weeks. Significant locations show 11 visits to interstate commercial area I've never been to. She attached a screenshot of the device list and the location log. She hit send. Then she went to family sharing and stared at the leave family button. She could tap it right now, cut the cord, stop sharing her location, her photos, her storage, her entire digital life with the man sleeping upstairs. But if she left the family group, Mark would get a notification. He'd know she was looking. He'd know she was digging. And whatever files had been stored in her cloud, whatever ghost data remained, he'd find a way to erase the traces before she could capture them. She closed the settings app and locked her phone. The gas line behind the wall hissed softly. The house settled around her. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. Sarah opened her notes app and added a second line below the first. He's not watching me because he's jealous. He's building a file. She stared at those words until the screen dimmed. Then she plugged in her phone, turned off the kitchen light, and walked past the laundry basket in the hall without folding a single piece. At the top of the stairs, she paused. Mark's snoring continued behind the bedroom door. Lila's old room, the one she'd moved out of 6 months ago to be closer to work, sat dark and empty at the end of the hall. Emma's room glowed faintly from the nightlight she still used. 3 doors, 3 people she thought she knew. Only one of them was still who she believed. Sarah went into Emma's room. She pulled the blanket up over her daughter's shoulder and stood there listening to the small, trusting sound of a child breathing in the dark. If Mark was building a file, then Sarah needed a better one. Chapter 4. The name on the register. The Marriott lobby smelled like vanilla diffusers and industrial carpet cleaner. Sarah walked in at 2:15 on a Wednesday afternoon, wearing her school lanyard and carrying a manila folder like she belonged there. The automatic doors exhaled warm air behind her. She'd chosen Wednesday because Mark never traveled midweek anymore. His hotel nights had shifted to Tuesdays. She'd checked the credit card app 3 times to confirm. He was at the office today. Lila was at her CNA shift. Emma was at school until 3:30. Sarah had 90 minutes. The front desk clerk was young, early 20s, buzz cut, name tag reading Devon. He smiled the way hotel employees are trained to smile. Professional, empty. Can I help you? He asked. Sarah placed the keycard sleeve on the counter. Room 1517. The corporate discount code faced up. Her heart thudded against her ribs, but her hands were still. I stayed in this room about 3 weeks ago, she said. I think I left a bracelet in the nightstand drawer. Silver chain. Small charm. Devon typed something into his terminal. Room 1517. He frowned. That room is actually booked under a recurring corporate reservation. I'd need to verify your name against the guest record. Sarah Park. More typing. Devon's frown deepened. I'm not finding that name associated with this room. He glanced up. Could it have been booked under a different name? My husband might have booked it. Mark Holloway. Devon's expression shifted. Not suspicion. Exactly. More like a door closing behind his eyes. Ma'am, I can't share guest information for privacy reasons. If you'd like to file a lost and found request, I can give you the form. Of course. Sarah took the form. Her pen hovered over the fields. Name, date of stay, room number, description of item. She filled it out slowly, buying time. The lobby hummed around her, luggage wheels on marble, elevator chimes, a phone ringing at the concierge desk. Does the corporate rate get used a lot? She asked, keeping her voice light. Conversational? The way she talked to nervous parents at school intake meetings. Devon hesitated. I mean, we have several corporate accounts. I'm just wondering because my husband's company switched hotels last quarter and I want to make sure his expenses get reimbursed to the right place. Something in Devon's posture relaxed. This was a billing question now. Safe territory. If it's a corporate account, the reservation is usually under the company name, not the individual. The guest checks in as a companion on the booking. Sarah's pen stopped. Companion. Yeah. The primary booking is the corporate account. The actual guest registers as a companion. It's pretty standard for business travel. Devon took the lost and found form from her. I'll make sure housekeeping checks the room. Thank you. Sarah picked up the keycard sleeve. Her fingers pressed into the cardboard hard enough to leave dents. One more thing. If the companion name is different from the corporate account name, is there any way I could? I really can't pull guest records, ma'am. Devon's smile returned. The trained one. But if you have a billing dispute, your husband's company HR should be able to request the folio directly. HR. The word landed like a key turning in a lock. Sarah thanked Devon again and walked toward the lobby exit. Her heels clicked on the marble. She pushed through the revolving door and the February air hit her face sharp, clean, carrying the smell of exhaust and wet pavement from the parking structure. She sat in her car for 4 minutes. The engine was off. The steering wheel was cold under her palms. Through the windshield, she watched a woman in a business suit drag a rolling suitcase toward the entrance. Normal. Everything about this hotel was designed to look normal. Companion registration. That meant the room wasn't booked under Mark's name or Sarah's name. It was booked under the company's corporate account, and whoever stayed in room 1517 checked in as a companion, which meant their ID was scanned, but filed under the corporate umbrella, not as the primary guest. If Sarah called the hotel, they'd stonewall her. Privacy policy, corporate protocol, dead ends stacked on dead ends. But if someone from Mark's company, someone in HR or compliance requested the booking folio through official channels, the companion name would be right there, printed on the receipt, time-stamped, verified by the front desk scanner that read the guest's driver's license at check-in. Sarah opened her phone. She had no contacts at Mark's company. She'd met a few people at holiday parties, names she barely remembered, faces blurred by champagne and small talk. But she remembered one, Priya Patel, compliance. They'd talked for 20 minutes at last year's Christmas party about school counseling versus corporate counseling. Priya had said something Sarah hadn't forgotten. My job is to protect the company from the people who work there. Sarah didn't have Priya's number, but she had LinkedIn. She opened the app and searched. Priya's profile appeared, current position, company name, a professional headshot with a serious expression and small gold earrings. Sarah stared at the screen. Reaching out to Mark's coworker was a line she couldn't uncross. If Priya mentioned it to anyone, if word got back to Mark, the thin advantage of his ignorance would evaporate. But the hotel was a wall. The credit card statements were circumstantial. The iCloud data was disturbing but technical. She needed the one piece of evidence that couldn't be explained away: the name on the register. She typed a message, kept it short, professional. Hi Priya, this is Sarah Park, Mark Holloway's wife. We met at the holiday party last year. I have a billing question related to Mark's corporate travel account. Would you have a few minutes to chat this week? No rush. She read it twice, changed no rush to whenever convenient, changed it back. Then she hit send before she could delete the whole thing. The phone felt heavy in her hand. She set it on the passenger seat and started the car. The engine turned over with a low rumble. The heat vents pushed stale air across her knuckles. She pulled out of the parking structure and turned left toward the school. She had 40 minutes before pickup, 40 minutes to be a mother and a counselor, and a person who hadn't just walked into her husband's secret hotel and asked a stranger for the name she already knew. At the first red light, her phone buzzed. LinkedIn notification. Priya Patel has accepted your connection request. Then a message: Hi Sarah. Of course I remember. Happy to chat. Coffee tomorrow? The light turned green. Sarah drove. Her jaw ached from clenching. Tomorrow? Tomorrow she'd sit across from a woman who could unlock the door Mark thought he'd welded shut, and she'd do it over coffee, like it was nothing, like her whole life wasn't balanced on a companion name printed on a hotel receipt. The school parking lot appeared ahead. Yellow buses lined up like dominoes. Children poured through the front doors in bright jackets, backpacks bouncing. Sarah parked. She checked her face in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were dry. Her expression was neutral. She looked like every other mother in the pickup line. She smoothed her hair and got out of the car to wait for Emma. Chapter 5: The House That Wasn't Hers. The envelope was tucked between a Pottery Barn catalog and a water bill. Sarah almost missed it. Plain white, no logo. Her name printed in a font that looked auto-generated. She tore it open standing at the mailbox, 1 foot on the curb. Homeowner Association Notice of Delinquency and Lien Warning. The February wind caught the edge of the paper. Sarah gripped it tighter. The words blurred, then sharpened. 3 months of unpaid HOA dues. $960 outstanding. If not resolved within 30 days, the association reserved the right to file a lien against the property at 412 Sycamore Lane. A lien on her house. Sarah's stomach dropped. She paid the mortgage. She paid the electric and the water and the internet. But the HOA Mark had set that up on auto pay from the joint account years ago. She'd never once checked it. Everything okay? Danny Rivera stood at the edge of her own driveway, holding a garden hose that wasn't connected to anything. She'd clearly been watching. Fine, Sarah said. The word came out thin. Danny crossed the strip of grass between their yards. She was 52, silver-streaked hair pulled into a low bun, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She'd lived next door for 8 years. They exchanged Christmas cookies and complaints about the trash pickup schedule. They were not close. But Danny had a quality that Sarah had always noticed: she looked at things like she was auditing them. That's an HOA letter, Danny said. Not a question. Sarah folded it. Just a billing mix-up. Those aren't mix-ups. Danny's voice was matter-of-fact. I worked bank compliance for 22 years. When an HOA sends a lien warning, someone stopped paying on purpose or someone redirected the payment. There's no third option. Sarah stared at her neighbor. The wind pushed a strand of hair across her face. She didn't brush it away. Can I ask you something? Sarah's voice was careful. If someone changed the contact email on an HOA account, would the homeowner get notified? Danny's eyes narrowed. Not with suspicion. With recognition. Depends on the portal setup. Most HOA management companies send a confirmation email to the old address when contact info changes. If that old address was already compromised, say, someone had access to the email account, the confirmation would just disappear. Sarah's throat tightened. She thought about the iCloud. The family sharing. The ghost phone backed up to her storage. If Mark had access to her email and through iCloud, he almost certainly did. He could change the HOA contact, intercept the confirmation, and reroute every notice to an address Sarah would never see. When did the dues stop being paid? Danny asked. Sarah unfolded the letter. October. 3 months ago. Danny's jaw set. That's not forgetting. That's staging. The word hung between them like something physical. Staging. Sarah thought about the credit card transfers, the hotel companion registration, the significant locations planted in her phone. Each one was a thread, and they all pulled in the same direction away from Mark and toward Sarah, as if someone was building a story in which Sarah was the problem, the unstable one, the one who couldn't manage her own finances or her own household. Danny, Sarah said, I think my husband is. She stopped. The sentence had too many possible endings. Having an affair, stealing from me, framing me, erasing me. You don't have to say it all right now. Danny reached out and took the letter from Sarah's hand. She studied it for 10 seconds. I'm going to say 2 things. First, log into the HOA portal tonight and check what email is on file. Screenshot everything before you change anything. Second, she looked up. When someone reroutes your mail and stops your payments, they're not punishing you. They're building a paper trail that says you can't handle your own life. Sarah nodded. Her eyes stung. Not from tears, from the wind, from standing outside too long in February without a coat because she'd only come out to check the mail. I have to pick up Emma, she said. Danny handed the letter back. My porch lights on every night, you know that? Sarah walked inside. She closed the door and leaned against it. The house was quiet. The heating vent pushed warm air across her ankles. From the living room shelf, the adoption photo album sat in its usual spot, the thick one with the burgundy cover. She'd organized it chronologically. Lila at 9, at 12, at 16, at 21, birthdays and holidays and first days of school. She pulled it down. It was heavier than she remembered. She opened it to the middle. 2 pages were empty. The adhesive squares where photos had been mounted were still visible, slightly darker rectangles on the cream-colored paper. But the photos were gone. 3 of them, all from the same year, Lila's 16th birthday party. The year Sarah had surprised her with a cake shaped like a camera because Lila wanted to be a photographer. The photos hadn't fallen out. The adhesive was undisturbed. Someone had peeled them away carefully, deliberately. Sarah closed the album. She held it against her chest the way she'd held Emma's soccer jersey in the laundry room 2 nights ago. But this time the warmth didn't come. She carried the album to the kitchen table and set it next to her laptop. She opened the HOA portal. The login worked. Mark hadn't changed that password. She navigated to account settings, then contact information. The primary email was no longer her Gmail. It had been changed to a ProtonMail address she'd never seen. The change was dated October 3rd. October 3rd, the same week the first hotel charge appeared on the credit card. Sarah screenshotted the page. Then the change log. Then the payment history showing 3 skipped auto debits. She sent everything to Sarah Park Records. She sat in the kitchen with the album open to the empty pages and the HOA letter and the laptop showing a stranger's email address where hers used to be. 3 systems, the credit card, the cloud, the house, all altered within the same 2-week window. This wasn't an affair spiraling out of control. This was a demolition plan, methodical, budgeted, timed. And if the HOA lien went through, Sarah's credit score would crater. Her name would be tied to financial negligence. In a custody dispute, if it ever came to that, Mark would point to the unpaid bills and the lien and say she can't even keep the house running. Sarah closed the album. She placed it back on the shelf. Then she picked it up again and put it in the hall closet behind the vacuum cleaner. If photos were disappearing, the album needed a safer home. She texted Danny, "You were right." Email was changed October 3rd. 3 dots appeared. Then save everything. Change nothing yet. We need to see the full picture before you pull any threads. Sarah locked her phone. Through the kitchen window, Danny's porch light glowed steady against the darkening sky. It had always been there, she'd just never needed it before. Chapter 6: The Compliance File. The coffee shop was called Grounds and Grace. It sat in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a nail salon, 12 miles from Mark's office. Priya had suggested it. Nowhere anyone from work would go, she'd said. The implication was clear before Sarah even asked. Sarah arrived first. She ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner booth with her back to the wall. The table was sticky with dried syrup from the breakfast rush. A country song played low from a speaker above the register. The barista wiped mugs and didn't look up. Priya walked in at 11:10. She wore a navy blazer and no jewelry except small gold studs. Her expression was professional, the face of someone who spent her career listening to uncomfortable things and deciding what they meant. "Thanks for meeting me," Sarah said. Priya sat down without ordering. She placed her phone face down on the table, a gesture that felt deliberate. "I need to tell you something before we start." Her voice was low, controlled. "I can't share confidential employee information with you. That's non-negotiable." "I understand. But..." Priya paused. She turned her coffee cup in a slow circle on the table. "There are things I can tell you that are general, procedural. Things anyone in compliance would know about how corporate expense systems work." Sarah pulled the keycard sleeve from her purse. "Room 1517. She placed it on the table between them. Priya looked at it. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers stopped moving on the coffee cup. "I found this 3 weeks ago," Sarah said. "My husband's hotel. I've been tracking credit card charges and cash withdrawals. Recurring transfers to a person in our family." She didn't say Lila's name. She didn't need to. "I went to the hotel. They told me the room was booked under a corporate account and the guest registered as a companion." Priya was quiet for a long time. The country song ended. Another one started. "Corporate travel accounts," Priya said carefully, "are audited quarterly. Expense reports require manager approval. But there are gaps." She spoke like she was reading from a manual. "If someone consistently books under a corporate rate and lists a companion, the companion's identity is only verified at check-in. It doesn't appear on the expense report. The company sees the room charge, not who slept in it, so the companion name just vanishes into the hotel's system, unless someone requests the folio, which requires either the guest, the corporate account administrator, or." Priya met Sarah's eyes. "An internal investigation with cause." The words floated between them. Sarah let them settle. "Is there cause?" Sarah asked. Priya picked up her phone. She held it for a moment, then put it down again. "I can tell you generally, not specifically, that when expense irregularities are flagged in any company, the compliance team has a duty to investigate. And if external parties are receiving benefits through company accounts, that's a policy violation at minimum." Sarah's pulse quickened. She kept her voice even. "What happens when compliance investigates?" "Documents get preserved. IT freezes relevant accounts. Legal gets involved if there's potential fraud." Priya leaned forward slightly. "And if the employee tries to delete records after the preservation notice, that becomes its own violation. Spoliation. It's worse than the original offense." Sarah understood. Priya wasn't sharing confidential information. She was teaching Sarah the rules of a game that was already being played. "If I had evidence," Sarah said slowly, "of transfers from a joint personal account that correlate with corporate travel dates, screenshots, timestamps, would that be useful to someone conducting an internal review?" Priya's face remained neutral. "Anyone can submit a tip to a company's compliance hotline. Those tips are reviewed confidentially. The tipster's identity is protected under company policy and in most states under whistleblower statutes. Anonymous, confidential, there's a difference." "But yes," Sarah nodded. She picked up the keycard sleeve and put it back in her purse. Her hand brushed against the folder of screenshots she'd printed at the FedEx store that morning: hotel charges, transfer records, iCloud device logs, HOA email changes, all dated, all annotated in her neat handwriting. "Priya." Sarah hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Priya's professional mask cracked for half a second. Something fierce moved behind her eyes. Because when someone uses company resources to fund personal manipulation, the company becomes complicit. And I refuse to let that happen on my watch. She straightened her blazer. Also, I liked you at that Christmas party. You were the only person who asked me a real question. Sarah almost smiled. Almost. One more thing, Priya said. She stood up and pushed her chair in. If your husband's expense patterns are what I think they are, this isn't about a relationship. The hotel charges are just the surface. Somebody is using corporate infrastructure to build a parallel life. Housing, transportation, communication, and billing it to the company and to you simultaneously. She picked up her phone. Follow the money past the hotel. The hotel is the lobby. The real rooms are somewhere else. She left without saying goodbye. The bell above the door chimed once. Sarah sat in the booth. The country music played. The barista wiped the same mug she'd been wiping for 10 minutes. Follow the money past the hotel. Sarah opened her phone and looked at the credit card app again. She'd been focused on the hotel charges and the L.J. transfers. But now she scrolled further, past the recurring expenses, past the groceries and the gas and the Netflix subscription. There, buried between a Home Depot charge and an auto pay for their car insurance, a monthly payment of $850 to a property management company she'd never heard of, starting in September. 5 months of payments, $4,250. Sarah's coffee had gone cold. She didn't notice. She was staring at the charge description and doing the math. The hotel wasn't the room. The hotel was just where they met. Somewhere in this city, Mark was paying rent on a place Sarah had never seen. And Lila was probably already living there. Chapter 7. The Order. The police cruiser's lights painted the front of 412 Sycamore Lane in alternating red and blue. Sarah stood on her own porch steps at 9:47 p.m., still wearing the cardigan she'd put on that morning, holding a grocery bag with Emma's favorite cereal and a gallon of milk. The officer was polite. They were always polite when they handed you a document that ended your life in your own home. Ma'am, I'm serving you with a temporary restraining order. He held out the papers. Filed this afternoon in county court. The petitioner is Lila Johnson. Sarah heard the name the way you hear a car horn a second before impact, too late to dodge, just early enough to brace. She took the papers. The grocery bag shifted. The milk carton pressed against her hip. The order was 2 pages, typed, stamped, official. It stated that Lila Johnson, residing at 412 Sycamore Lane, feared for her physical safety due to threatening behavior, verbal aggression, and escalating confrontations by Sarah Park, residing at 412 Sycamore Lane. Lila had listed Sarah's house as her own address. Sarah read the line again. The red and blue lights swept across the paper, making the words pulse. There's a provision, the officer continued. He pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. You're required to vacate the premises within 2 hours and maintain a distance of 500 feet until the hearing date. This is my house. Sarah's voice was flat, controlled. The voice she used at school when a parent screamed in her office and she had to stay professional. My name is on the mortgage. I understand, ma'am. But the order is valid until a judge reviews it. If you violate the terms, that's a criminal offense. The front door opened. Mark stood in the doorframe. White shirt, no tie, arms crossed. His face held an expression Sarah had never seen before, or maybe she'd always seen it and only now recognized what it was. Satisfaction wearing the mask of concern. Sarah, he said. His voice was gentle, rehearsed. I tried to call you. Lila's been really scared. I think it's better if you stay somewhere else for a few days until this gets sorted out. Behind him, in the hallway, Lila appeared. She was wearing one of Sarah's cardigans, the blue one from Anthropology. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She leaned against the wall like a woman recovering from something terrible. Emma's bedroom light was on upstairs. Sarah could see the glow through the window. Her daughter was in that house. Behind a locked door. guarded by the man who was stealing Sarah's life and the woman who was helping him do it. "Where's Emma?" Sarah asked. "She's fine," Mark said. "She's doing homework. I want to see her. The order says. I want to see my daughter." The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, please." Sarah's hands were shaking. The grocery bag slipped. The milk carton hit the porch step and split. White liquid poured across the concrete and dripped through the gaps in the planks. The cereal box tumbled into the puddle. Nobody moved to help her pick it up. "You have until 11:47, the officer said quietly. "I'd recommend gathering essential items and making arrangements." Sarah looked past the officer, past Mark, past Lila in her stolen cardigan. She looked at Emma's window. The curtain moved. A small face appeared for a second. Then the curtain dropped. Sarah walked inside. The officer followed at a distance. Mark stepped aside, not to make room for her, but to watch her, to observe, to catalog. She went to the bedroom first. She packed a bag, clothes for 3 days, her laptop, the folder of screenshots from the FedEx store, her passport and Emma's birth certificate from the fireproof box under the bed. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who'd been expecting this without knowing it. In the hallway, she paused at the closet. The adoption album was still behind the vacuum cleaner. She pulled it out and shoved it into her bag. The zipper barely closed. She came downstairs. Mark was on his phone. Lila had retreated to the kitchen, Sarah's kitchen, with Sarah's coffee maker and Sarah's dish towels and the ceramic mug Emma had painted at summer camp. Sarah stopped at the foot of the stairs. "Emma," she called up. Silence. Then, "Mom, I have to go somewhere tonight, baby. I'll explain tomorrow." "Why?" Sarah's throat closed. The officer shifted his weight. Mark's thumb paused on his phone screen. "Just for a little while," Sarah managed. "I love you. Love you too." 2 words through a closed door. That was all she got. Sarah walked to the front door. On the porch, the milk was still spreading. The cereal box sagged in the puddle. The officer handed her a card with the hearing date February 28, 12 days away. She loaded her bag into the car. She sat behind the wheel. She pulled the door shut. The interior was dark. The dashboard clock read 10:11 p.m. Through the living room window, she could see Mark closing the blinds, one by one, methodical, like sealing a package. Sarah started the engine. She backed out of the driveway and drove 4 blocks to Danny's house. The porch light was on. It was always on. She parked. She didn't get out. She sat in the dark and opened her phone and took a screenshot of the TRO. Every page, every paragraph, every line that said her adopted daughter was afraid of her and her husband was a witness and her house was no longer her home. Then she opened her notes app and added a new line. 12 days. She stared at it until the screen dimmed. Danny's front door opened. The silhouette stood there, waiting, not approaching, giving Sarah the space to choose when to walk in. Sarah got out of the car. The album was heavy in her bag. The February air burned her lungs. Danny's porch light hummed a low, electrical sound, steady as a heartbeat. She climbed the steps. Danny held the door open. "How bad?" Danny asked. Sarah set her bag down. "They took my house." Danny closed the door and locked it. "Then we take it back." Chapter 8. The storage unit. The storage facility sat off exit 14, tucked between a FedEx and a closed Thai restaurant. Sarah recognized the address before she even parked the same commercial strip that had appeared in her significant locations. The 11 phantom visits logged by a phone she'd never carried to this place. It was 8 in the morning. The sky was the color of old dishwater. A security camera on a pole rotated slowly above the entrance gate. Sarah sat in Danny's Honda Civic. Her own car was still at the house, listed as joint property on a document. She could no longer challenge until February 28, 8 days from now. Danny had lent her the car with the same no-nonsense efficiency she'd applied to everything since Sarah had shown up on her porch 4 nights ago. "Park across the street," Danny had said on the phone at 6 a.m. "Don't go inside, just look." But Sarah was done just looking. She'd spent the last 4 days at Danny's kitchen table building what Danny called the timeline. Every screenshot, every charge, every date, printed on Danny's home printer, organized in a 3-ring binder with color-coded tabs: red for financial, blue for digital, green for property, yellow for legal. The binder sat on the passenger seat. 37 pages of evidence. Not proof, not yet, but a pattern so clear that any skeptical adult would say "oh damn" instead of "come on." Last night, she added the final piece. Ring doorbell footage from the cloud account Mark hadn't thought to disconnect because Ring was registered to Sarah's email, not the family iCloud. She'd logged in from Danny's laptop and downloaded 6 weeks of motion-activated clips. The footage showed Mark loading boxes into his truck on 3 separate afternoons: November 12th, November 26th, December 10th, always between 2 and 4 p.m., when Sarah was at school and Emma was in class. Heavy boxes, filing boxes, trash bags that sagged with soft contents, clothes, maybe, blankets, things you'd need to furnish a second home. She'd cross-referenced the dates with the credit card. On November 12th, the property management payment had posted. On November 26th, there was a charge to a furniture store, Rooms to Go, $1,200. On December 10th, a charge to a home electronics store, Best Buy, $489. He was building a life, piece by piece, charge by charge, box by box, moving it out of Sarah's house and into a place she wasn't supposed to know existed. And this storage facility was the midpoint, the staging area. Sarah opened her phone. She searched the county assessor's public records, the database Danny had shown her how to use. She typed in the property management company's name and scrolled through results until she found it. A lease registered to Mark Holloway, address 2240 Birch Court, Unit 6. A 2-bedroom apartment 14 minutes from the hotel. Start date September 1st. September 1st? 1 month before the HOA email change. 2 months before the first hotel charge on the credit card. Mark hadn't improvised this. He'd planned it like a fiscal quarter. Sarah screenshotted the record, sent it to Sarah Park Records, added a note: lease predates all other evidence. This was the first move. She looked at the storage facility. Unit numbers were painted on the roll-up doors in large white font. She couldn't see inside from the car, but the credit card showed monthly payments to Secure Store Exit $1489 a month for 4 months, $356, a small number compared to the thousands flowing elsewhere. But this was the junction. This was where the household ended and the parallel life began. Her phone buzzed. Text from Danny: County records pulled. Lease confirmed. 2240 Birch Court, Unit 6. Also, I found something else. Call me when you can. Sarah called. Danny picked up on the first ring. The storage unit payment, Danny said. It's not on the joint card. It's on a card I haven't seen before. I ran the transaction through the public merchant lookup. The card is registered to a business account, Holloway Consulting LLC. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Mark doesn't have a consulting business. He does now. Filed the LLC in August. Registered agent, a paralegal service in Delaware. It's a shell, Sarah. The storage, the apartment lease, possibly the hotel. He's layering everything through a business entity so it doesn't show on your joint financial records. The car was cold. Sarah's breath made small clouds that disappeared against the windshield. Outside, a man in coveralls unlocked one of the storage units and pulled out a lawn mower. Normal life. People storing normal things. Danny, what do I do with this? You don't do anything with the storage unit directly. You don't go in. You don't try to open it. That's trespassing and it kills your credibility. Danny's voice was firm. What you do is take the LLC filing, the lease record, the storage payment, the ring footage, the credit card timeline, and the hotel key card, all of it, and you hand it to a family law attorney with a petition for emergency relief. Asset concealment during a marriage is grounds for freezing accounts and modifying court orders. The hearing is in 8 days. Then you file before the hearing. You walk into that courtroom on the 28th with everything organized, and you don't let Mark Holloway control the narrative. Sarah stared at the storage facility, unit after unit, locked doors hiding other people's lives. Somewhere behind one of those doors, pieces of her household sat in the dark. The boxes Mark had carried out while she was teaching third graders how to manage their feelings. "There's one more thing," Danny said. "I called a friend at the county clerk's office, not for favors, just to ask about public filing procedures. She mentioned that when an LLC is used to lease property during an active marriage, it can trigger a disclosure requirement in divorce proceedings. If Mark didn't disclose the LLC and the apartment, that's not just deception. In family court, that's fraud on the court. Fraud on the court." The words were heavy, final. Sarah turned the key. The engine started. Warm air slowly pushed through the vents. "I need a lawyer," she said. "I have a name. She used to handle compliance referrals at my old bank. She's a family law attorney now, works out of a shared office near the courthouse. She's not cheap, but she's mean in the right way." Sarah almost laughed. The sound surprised her, a small huff that fogged the windshield. "Her name is Cheryl Whitmore," Danny continued. "I'll text you the number." Sarah pulled away from the storage facility. In the rearview mirror, the security camera continued its slow rotation, watching everything, recording nothing that mattered. She drove back to Danny's house. The binder on the passenger's seat shifted with every turn. 37 pages, 8 days, 1 hearing. She parked and sat for a moment. Then she opened her notes app and deleted the line that said 12 days. She replaced it. 8 days. Attorney. File first. She picked up the binder and walked inside. Danny was already at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee and a yellow legal pad. "Start from the LLC," Danny said. "We'll work backward." Chapter 9, Room 1517. The county courthouse smelled like floor polish and recycled air. Sarah sat in the second row of courtroom 4B, wearing a black blazer she'd bought at Target 2 days ago because everything professional she owned was locked inside a house she couldn't enter. Cheryl Whitmore sat beside her mid-50s, gray bob, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She had the energy of a woman who'd heard every lie a courtroom could produce and had stopped being impressed by any of them. The binder sat on the table, 43 pages now. Danny had helped her add the LLC filing, the apartment lease, and a certified copy of the ring footage timestamps. Everything was tabbed, color-coded, cross-referenced. Mark sat across the aisle with his own attorney, a tall man in a charcoal suit who looked expensive. Mark's shirt was pressed. His posture was relaxed. He looked like a man attending a routine board meeting. Lila sat behind Mark. She wore a cream blouse and minimal makeup. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes were wet. She looked like a victim. She looked like she'd practiced looking like a victim. The gallery held 9 people, 2 clerks, a court reporter, a woman with a legal pad who might have been a journalist, 3 people waiting for other cases, and Danny, sitting in the back row with her reading glasses on and her arms crossed. Judge Hernandez entered. The room stood, sat. The air conditioning hummed. Mark's attorney spoke first. He was smooth, practiced. He described Sarah as a woman in emotional crisis whose behavior had escalated to the point where Ms. Johnson feared for her safety. He referenced the TRO. He referenced documented verbal confrontations. He asked the court to make the restraining order permanent and to grant Mark temporary sole custody of Emma. Sarah's jaw clenched so hard her back teeth ached. Cheryl's hand pressed her forearm once. Brief, steady, wait. Lila took the stand. She cried. The tears were real. Sarah could tell because Lila had always been a convincing crier. She'd cried at 9 years old in the courthouse lobby when the judge asked if she wanted to be adopted. She'd cried at 16 when Sarah found her diary and didn't read it. She'd cried 3 weeks ago in a hotel corridor while wearing a red dress. She screamed at me, Lila said, her voice trembling. She said I wasn't her real daughter. She said I was a mistake. The court reporter typed. The judge's expression was neutral. I just want to feel safe, Lila whispered. Cheryl stood slowly. She buttoned her blazer. She picked up the binder. Your Honor, my client didn't come here to argue about feelings. She came with facts. Cheryl opened to the first tab, read, Financial. On October 1st of last year, Mark Holloway registered a limited liability company in Delaware, Holloway Consulting LLC. This company has no employees, no clients, and no revenue. What it does have is a checking account that's been used to pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment at 2240 Birch Court, Unit 6. She placed the LLC filing on the evidence table. On September 1st, 1 month before the LLC was registered, Mr. Holloway signed a lease on that apartment. Monthly rent $850. He did not disclose this lease to his wife. He did not disclose the LLC. The lease went on the table. Starting in October, Mr. Holloway's corporate expense account at his employer was used to book a recurring hotel room 1517 at the downtown Marriott. The guest registered as a companion on the corporate booking. Cheryl held up the keycard sleeve. The cardboard was slightly bent from being carried in Sarah's purse for 3 weeks. The companion's identity was not disclosed on the expense reports submitted to Mr. Holloway's employer. However, Cheryl paused. She placed the sleeve on the table with deliberate care. The hotel's check-in records, obtained through a compliance inquiry initiated by Mr. Holloway's own company, confirmed that the companion registered for room 1517 on 7 separate occasions was Lila Johnson. The room shifted, not physically, but the air changed. The court reporter's fingers paused for half a beat. Mark's attorney reached for his pen. Mark's face didn't move, but his right hand, resting on the table, closed into a fist. Slowly, like something mechanical winding tight. Moving to the digital evidence, Cheryl continued. She opened the blue tab. An unknown iPhone 14 Pro was registered to my client's Apple ID without her knowledge. This device created phantom location data, 11 visits to a commercial address near the interstate where Mr. Holloway maintains a storage unit. This fabricated location history was designed to establish a pattern of erratic behavior attributable to my client. The iCloud screenshots went on the table. The family's HOA account contact email was changed on October 3 without my client's knowledge to a Proton Mail address she has never used. As a result, 3 months of HOA dues went unpaid, generating a lien warning against the family home. The HOA letter, the portal screenshots, the email change log, and finally Cheryl opened the green tab. Ring doorbell footage from my client's own security system shows Mr. Holloway removing household items from the residence on 3 dates: November 12, November 26, and December 10 during hours when my client was at work. The footage timestamps were printed on a single sheet, each matched to a corresponding credit card charge. Furniture store, electronics store, storage facility. Cheryl stepped back from the evidence table. She let the silence hold for 3 seconds. Your Honor, the restraining order filed by Ms. Johnson was not a response to fear. It was the final step in a coordinated plan to remove my client from her own home, destroy her financial standing, and fabricate a narrative of instability. The evidence doesn't suggest this. The evidence proves it. Mark's attorney stood. Your Honor, these documents are my client has a right to review. He can review them right now, Cheryl said. They're all public records, personal account screenshots authenticated by metadata, and employer-initiated compliance findings. Nothing was hacked. Nothing was fabricated. The timeline speaks for itself. Mark leaned toward his attorney. Sarah couldn't hear what he whispered, but she could see his jaw working. The professional calm was cracking. Underneath it was something she recognized: not anger, not fear, but the expression of a man whose spreadsheet had just been overwritten. Your Honor, Mark's attorney tried again. My client maintains that these financial arrangements were made for legitimate business purposes and that a business with no clients and no revenue, Cheryl interrupted, whose sole function was to hide an apartment lease from his wife. Judge Hernandez raised a hand. The room went quiet. I've reviewed the initial TRO petition, the judge said, and I've reviewed the documentation presented today. She removed her glasses. The temporary restraining order against Sarah Park is dissolved effective immediately. Lila made a sound. Small, choked. Mark didn't move. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm issuing a temporary order granting Mrs. Park immediate re-entry to the marital residence. I'm also ordering a freeze on all joint financial accounts pending a full hearing on asset disclosure. She looked directly at Mark. Mr. Holloway, I strongly recommend you retain counsel for that proceeding. The evidence presented today raises serious concerns about financial concealment during marriage. This court does not take that lightly. The gavel came down, a single, sharp crack that echoed off the courtroom walls and settled into silence. Sarah's hands were shaking, not from fear, from something she didn't have a name for yet, something between relief and rage, between victory and grief. Cheryl placed a hand on her shoulder. Brief. Professional? In the back row, Danny uncrossed her arms. She didn't smile. She nodded once. Mark stood. His attorney gathered papers with quick, mechanical movements. Mark walked toward the exit. He passed Sarah without looking at her. His footsteps were measured, controlled, the gait of a man who was already calculating his next move. Lila remained seated. Her tears had stopped. She stared straight ahead. The victim mask had slipped. Underneath was something younger and more frightened than Sarah expected. The face of a 23-year-old who'd bet everything on the wrong man and was just now realizing the chips were gone. Sarah stood. Her legs felt loose. The courtroom was emptying. She picked up the binder. 43 pages. 3 weeks of work. 22 years of marriage. 14 years of motherhood. All reduced to tabs and timestamps. She walked out into the corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A water fountain gurgled in the corner. Somewhere down the hall, a child was crying, the sharp, clean sound of a kid who'd been waiting too long in a government building. Sarah stopped by the window. The parking lot below was half empty. February sunlight fell across the cars in pale stripes. She opened her phone and deleted the note that said 8 days. Attorney, file first. She typed a new one. Going home. Chapter 10. The morning after. The house was different. Not the walls or the floors or the furniture that remained. Mark had left most of it. The couch. The dining table. Emma's bedroom. Untouched. The kitchen was intact except for the good knife set and the espresso machine he'd bought himself for Father's Day. The difference was the silence. It was Sarah's silence now. Not the silence of a house holding secrets. The silence of a house exhaling. She'd come back on the 28th, 4 hours after the hearing. Emma had been at school. Mark was already gone, not dramatically, not with police escort. He'd packed 2 suitcases and driven to the Birch Court apartment that wasn't a secret anymore. His closet was half empty. His nightstand was cleared. The drawer where he kept his passport and a leather-bound notebook she'd never been allowed to read, both gone. The Ring doorbell had recorded his departure. 2:17 p.m. One trip to the truck. No hesitation. The efficiency of a man who'd rehearsed this exit months ago. He'd just expected to be the one staying. Cheryl filed the financial disclosure petition the same afternoon. By March 2nd, the joint accounts were frozen under court order. The credit card was suspended. The Holloway Consulting LLC checking account was flagged by the bank after Cheryl's office submitted a fraud inquiry. The numbers came into focus slowly, the way objects sharpen after fog lifts. The LLC had moved $22,000 in 5 months. Rent, furniture, utilities, storage, a car payment on a vehicle Sarah didn't know Mark owned, a used Honda registered to the LLC, $1,400 a month for the apartment, $89 for storage, $300 for the car, the rest scattered across charges that painted the outline of a complete second household. $22,000 from the marriage. Without a word, Priya's compliance investigation moved at its own institutional pace, but the results reached Sarah through Cheryl. Mark's corporate travel account had been suspended pending review. 7 hotel bookings listed Lila Johnson as the companion guest. The company's general counsel had opened a file. Mark's access to the expense system was revoked. His manager had been briefed. He wasn't fired. Not yet. But the architecture of his professional life was crumbling at the foundation the same way he'd tried to crumble Sarah's. Lila disappeared, not dramatically. She stopped responding to Sarah's texts, not that Sarah sent many. She stopped coming to Emma's soccer games. She changed her phone number. Danny heard from a neighbor 2 streets over that a young woman matching Lila's description had moved into a shared apartment near the community college campus. Sarah didn't chase her. That surprised her. She expected to feel the pull of 14 years, the weight of every school project and birthday cake and midnight conversation, and she did feel it. It sat in her chest like a bruise that ached when she breathed too deeply. But she didn't call. She didn't drive past the campus. She didn't write the letter she'd composed in her head 100 times during the sleepless nights at Danny's house. Some doors closed from both sides. The credit freeze went through on March 5th. All 3 bureaus. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her table, in her house, in her chair, and watched the confirmation emails arrive one by one. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. 3 locks on a vault she hadn't known was open. The HOA lien was withdrawn after Cheryl sent a certified letter documenting the unauthorized email change. The HOA board didn't apologize. They waived the late fees and processed 3 months of back payments from the frozen joint account. $960 restored. The number felt small now. It had felt like everything in February. Emma asked questions. Of course she did. She was 13 and observant and had spent 2 weeks watching her mother sleep on a neighbor's couch. Sarah told her the truth, edited for age, stripped of detail, but honest in structure. Dad and I are separating. It's about things between adults. It's not about you. You didn't cause it. You can't fix it. Both of those are true at the same time. Emma had listened with the careful expression of a child who knew she was being managed but also knew it was done with love. Is Lila coming back? Emma had asked. Sarah had paused. I don't know, baby. Do you want her to? The question had landed like a stone in deep water. Sarah still hadn't answered it, not out loud. On a Thursday morning in mid-March, 17 days after the hearing, Sarah woke up before the alarm. 5:42 a.m. The house was dark. A cardinal was singing outside the bedroom window, the same bird that had been there every spring since they'd moved in. She lay still and listened. Then she got up. She went to the kitchen. She filled the coffee maker with water and grounds and pressed the button. The machine gurgled and hissed. The smell of coffee filled the room, dark, bitter, warm. The smell of mornings. While the coffee brewed, she opened her phone. She went to settings, then Apple ID. Then family sharing. 2 devices listed. Sarah's iPhone, Emma's iPad. She'd removed Mark's phone and Lila's phone the day she came home. The ghost iPhone, the 14 Pro, graphite, had already been deregistered by Apple's fraud team after Cheryl filed the report. But one thing remained. Location sharing. Sarah's location was still broadcasting to no one, a signal sent into empty space, a habit left over from a time when sharing meant trust. She turned it off. The toggle switched from green to gray. The map on her screen went blank. Her blue dot disappeared. For the first time in years, nobody knew where Sarah Park was standing, and the absence of surveillance felt like oxygen. She poured her coffee, black. The mug was Emma's summer camp ceramic, lopsided, hand-painted with a crooked sun. The handle was too small for adult fingers. Sarah held it carefully. She walked to the front door. The Ring doorbell was mounted beside the frame, the same unit that had recorded Mark's departures. She opened the app and checked the connection. Active. Battery at 87%. Motion zones set to the porch and driveway. She edited the account settings, removed Mark's email from the shared access list, changed the password, set up 2-factor authentication to her new email. Sarah Park Records, the one she'd created the first night, sitting at this same table, when everything was still just numbers on a screen. The doorbell was hers now. The house was hers. The record was hers. She stood in the doorway and looked out at the street. Danny's porch light was off. It was morning. She didn't need it anymore. The adoption album sat on the shelf where Sarah had returned it after the hearing. She'd opened it once since coming home. The 3 missing photos from Lila's 16th birthday were still gone, but the rest remained: the courthouse lobby, the first Christmas, the backyard barbecues, the prom dress shopping trip where Lila had tried on 11 dresses and chosen the cheapest one because she didn't want to be a burden. Sarah had closed the album without lingering. She hadn't replaced the missing photos. She hadn't added new ones. She'd simply put it back on the shelf, upright, visible, unashamed. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't evidence. It was a record of something that had been real even if it hadn't lasted. The coffee cooled in her hands. The cardinal sang. Emma's alarm would go off in 38 minutes. There were lunches to pack and permission slips to sign, and a parent-teacher conference at 2 that Sarah would attend alone for the first time in 13 years. She took a sip. The coffee was strong, almost too hot. She felt it move down her throat and settle in her chest, a small warmth in a quiet house. The kitchen window was open half an inch. March air slipped through, still cold, but softer than February, the kind of cold that carried the possibility of something else on the other side of it. Sarah set down the mug. She picked up her phone one last time and opened the Notes app. The document that had started with "Who is paying for what and why" was still there. Every entry she'd typed in the dark, in the car, at Danny's table, in the courthouse corridor. She read through them. Each line was a version of herself she'd been forced to become: detective, accountant, plaintiff, exile, mother defending the right to exist in her own home. She selected all. She didn't delete them. She moved them to a folder labeled "Done" and closed the app. The screen went dark. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, tired, sharp-eyed, hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing a sweatshirt that smelled like her own laundry detergent in her own dryer in her own house. She looked like a woman who had survived something and was too practical to celebrate and too honest to pretend it hadn't cost her. The sun cracked the horizon. Light pushed through the kitchen window and hit the coffee mug and the counter and her hands. Warm, direct, hers. Sarah finished her coffee standing up. She rinsed the mug. She set it upside down in the drying rack. Then she went upstairs to wake up her daughter.
Thanks for listening. I hope this gave your heart a quiet moment to rest. See you next time.